Hello, everyone, and welcome to One Control Board Podcast, episode 340. My name is Benjamin Yoder. I'm here today talking about video games. Got a crazy news story this week that I want to talk about. I feel like we've had a lot of crazy news stories in the last year and a half, and I'm like, part of me is like, maybe it's just been a crazy time, but also I feel like I've been paying more attention to more niche game news. That's been kind of the direction I've been moving. We're not saying like, oh, Phil Spencer said Final Fantasy XIV will come to Xbox one day anymore, right? I don't feel like we're doing that stuff nearly as much anymore. But all the more reason I feel like more exciting news stories in my opinion. So we also have some like really big fashion rhythm news. My favorite genre, the genre I made up, the fashion rhythm genre. I don't know if it's my favorite genre. Be curious, like hey, rank your favorite genres, buddy. I think Japanese RPGs will probably still be my top, despite never playing them. Speaking of which, we're also talking about Final Fantasy XIII this week. Another Code remake and me not buying it and talking a little bit about that. But there's kind of something that happened that maybe put a nail in the coffin for me. And then also, I bought some games as well. Did I play games? Not so much, but I did buy some video games. I feel like my buying video game pace has slowed down maybe. I say that, but I actually have my backloggery above me open. And my 2020 games list was 130. My 2021 is 108, my 2022 is 89, and my 2023 is 91. So maybe things haven't slowed down all that much. I mean, we went under 100. That's an improvement, but I feel also like the rate I'm beating games has slowed down as well, is the other thing. So anyways, that's neither here or there. I bought some video games. We're going to talk about it. So yeah, I went to, if you don't know, I live in Las Vegas, and so I've been going around to a couple of, retro game stores here off and on over the years, and there's a couple I like, a couple I don't like. One particular brand establishment I like here is Retro City Games. They have 2 locations in Las Vegas, and I really like their variety. I feel like they have a really nice variety, and they're always kind of like constantly moving stock through and things like that. And I was actually kind of nosy this time when I was there, and asked the guy who was checking me out, and just like, and I think I recognize the guy, so I think he's been there a long time, and I don't know if he's like owns it. There was another guy who also was like own it, so I don't know if he like co-founded. I don't know. He's been there a long time. I recognize him. And I did ask him. I was like, hey, there's another store in town here. Should I say their name? I don't know. I've said their name before. It's like We Play Games. I don't have the greatest experience with We Play Games here in town, for a lot of reasons, but I feel like their inventory just like never changes is the big thing. And so I kind of just stopped going to We Play Games because I'm just like, there's nothing new here ever. So like, why do I keep coming back here? And I talked to him a little bit about that. Like, how do they keep their store inventory kind of fresh and moving at Retro City Games? And he was like, well, it's pretty simple actually. Basically, one of two things. One, we have lower prices generally. And so what that means is that games tend to move faster. He's like, that's kind of one thing. And then also he said the second part is that we have a higher trade-in value. And so that means we typically get more trade-ins as well. So the margin that we're making on each individual game is smaller than We Play Games, right? And so that was kind of, it makes sense, right? And he basically is saying that like, yes, they're going to be able to make, as much money as us selling less games, but at the end of the day, it does mean that their inventory is just a little bit more sluggish compared to theirs. And he was basically said there's no really one right way to do it. It just depends on what you're trying to do, right? And so that's where the conversation more or less ended there. But it did make me think a little bit about like what We Play Games is as an establishment here, because Retro City Games is entirely just like, hey, come buy some games, you piece of shit. I don't know why I said that, but come in here and just buy some video games. There is other stuff there, but that's largely the focus of it. Where We Play Games is also a card shop. They have card games going on there and stuff. So I think there's a little bit more of like an establishment and a community focused around doing things together at We Play Games. So there probably is like some element with We Play Games of just like, there's a store loyalty as well of just like, I come here regularly and, I've been thinking about picking up a new game. Let me just walk over there kind of thing, right? And when I think about also the people who are at We Play Games, like the actual like customers there, I do feel like the customers that we play games tend to shift a little younger, and it's usually like the kid-parent type kind of thing. Not always, but a lot of times I feel like I see a lot more kids in there with parents. Where I feel like Retro City Games usually is more of, well, I think it depends on the location as well, but usually it feels like it is a young adult demographic, late teens, early, or in their 20s, right? And I imagine into my age now, right, of 30s and stuff like that. I'm an adult. I don't know when middle age starts coming up on me, but some point. Anyways, but it depends on the location, because there's two locations. One that's kind of out in the middle of nowhere, and that one I feel like is more definitely the core user of just like, I'm looking at the word core right now, so I said core user, sorry. But like the older audience, probably there, versus the one at the like open air mall kind of thing. I feel like there's a lot more stuff going on there, so maybe more families end up in there. I don't know. I have to think about the demographics, like an open air mall or something like that. So it was kind of interesting. There's another guy who opened up a game shop there that was a pretty sad looking game shop. I'm curious. I haven't looked lately to see if he's still open. It did not look great when I went in there, and I feel like I have not seen it when walking into that open air mall in the past. So curious if it's still there. Maybe I should stop by there sometime. But anyways, the games I did buy though, I was ecstatic to find me a copy of Lovely Lisa. If you don't know, this is a Lika-chan game. So this is like the little doll. Basically, I don't know how her lineage goes back. She might have a relationship to Barbie. I feel like Lika and Jenny have a connection. And Jenny is basically a rebranded Barbie, as far as I understand. I mean, not rebranded. There's differences between them. I actually watched Jillian sent me a video about some doll history stuff, which was interesting. But yeah, so I don't really know that lineage there, but I picked that up, and I think Lika games from the time were kind of fitting into that kind of Love and Berry kind of situation when you look at the arcade games and stuff like that. I don't really know that much about Lovely Lisa, the localized DS game that came out, but it is definitely in that style, right? So I've been wanting to check out a Lika game for a while. I think there's 2 that came out on the DS, maybe some more. So that's cool. I actually had somebody reach out to me in Japanese on Twitter about it and being like, "Oh, her name's Lisa." And I was like, I need to try to use some Japanese, and sent her a horribly broken sentence. And I'm like, this probably doesn't make any fucking sense. I'm cursing. This is an explicit podcast this week, apparently. I don't know why I'm cursing. This probably doesn't make any sense whatsoever, but here you go. And I added a little machine translation note. It's like, this is what I was trying to say if my words make no sense. But yeah. Anyways, so I got that. I was really excited for that. I picked up Chocobo Stallion. I had no idea this is a game that even existed. As far as I can tell, looking at the back of the box, it is a horse racing Chocobo game. Which, I mean, look, yes, there's been those kind of things in Final Fantasy before. Final Fantasy VII, you have actual Chocobo racing where you're with. I don't know if you actually control anything in that game, actually. But there's Chocobo racing in there. There's Chocobo racing in Final Fantasy XI. I'd imagine Final Fantasy XIV, although I think Final Fantasy XIV is a Mario Kart style game, not a horse derby game. It is kind of funny to think about that, like being added to Final Fantasy XI, and like the appeal of horse derby racing, and like how much does Chocobo racing actually matter to most people in that context. So, anyways. But yeah, I picked that up. Had no idea that existed. Eternal Sonata. I've been looking for that for a long time. I found a PS3 version at a convention a while ago, and it was just a little too pricey for me. This is the 360 version, which I think has less content. But honestly, for me, that's fine. I am at the point where, like, when it comes to JRPGs, a lot of times the less content, the better, if it's not a part of the main narrative. So it might work out for me. Either way, it was like $15, something like that. So not the worst. And I've been looking for it for a long time, so I was happy to pick it up. I also found a copy of Life Science Surgical Unit, which is, if you don't remember, a game that came out around the same time as Trauma Center. Same idea on the DS of, surgery with the touchscreen kind of thing. Has more of a, I think, generic anime kind of look to it versus Trauma Center. Trauma Center has kind of an aesthetic to it. Well, the later ones definitely got a different aesthetic, but Anyways, but it got it reviewed really bad at the time, and I was like, I just kind of ignored it because it reviewed bad, and now in my future self, I don't really pay attention to reviews very much, and I was like, oh yeah, I was kind of interested in this, so I picked it up. A little bit more expensive than I'd like, it's like $20, but it's fine. I picked up Activision's Little League World Series Baseball 2008. The screenshots on the back looked pretty all right. It made me wonder if it was a Japanese baseball game that got localized under Activision. But I saw later the developer has a very Western sounding name. I'm not saying that means they're a Western developer, but it sounded very Western. So we'll see. There's some company, it was River something that made PC River Hill Software. I always thought they were a Western developer, only to find out later they're a Japanese developer. But anyways, so I got that. And then I also got, I believe this is an Ubisoft game or THQ game or something like that, Alex Rider's Stormbreaker, which is based off a movie license. It's a dude, I don't know, it seemed like an action game, and it kind of looked all right on the back of the box, and I don't know what it was about it, but it drew me in. I was like, I'll check this out. Check the year on it. It's a 2004 video game, so hey, I'm going to take a strong guess. Maybe not the greatest video game if it came out in 2004, because that's launch window. I say that, but man, Asphalt Urban GT, God, Asphalt Urban GT is a great video game. And I love it more than I like Ridge Racer on the DS at the very least. So, but I shouldn't write it off. But yeah, I got that, and it was also pretty neat. So yeah, I thought that was a nice little set of games. A lot of interesting DS games. I thought that was a really good, I don't know if somebody traded in a bunch of DS games, but it was an interesting library there. I did not buy it at the Retro City Games, but Falling Stars, I also picked that up because I forget who it is. There's some guy who makes I think PlayStation YouTube videos. It's very Thor high heels aesthetic to it, I feel like. He also does fan translation videos. Here's the latest fan translations from this year or something like that. I don't remember his name, and I don't think I've ever watched his content, but I follow him on Twitter. But he was talking about a game called Falling Stars, and he was like, this game doesn't look like a real video game, and it looks very fake, I will say. But there's a lot of things I looked at that game. I was like, this looks kind of interesting, so I picked it up. Just a nice amount of variety. And visually, I think it was doing some interesting stuff as well. But it looks very amateurish Dojin game in an era when that really wasn't something you'd see on game consoles. But it is a 2008 PS2 game. So that was the type of game coming out on a PS2, really. So anyways, let's talk about a game I have not bought, though. Another Code remake. I don't remember the actual full recollection, something like that. This was announced a while ago at Nintendo Direct, right? And I'm a big fan of Hotel Dusk. Another Code, I'm a little less of a fan of. I like the games. Another Code 1 and Another Code R, I've got mixed feelings on. But, generally the sentiment is that they're all by the developer Sing, and they have a lot of similar values and things like that between them, and they do a lot of really interesting things with hey, the DS is the new system with a lot of interesting, interaction points on the system with the microphone, the touchscreen. The Wii has the IR pointer, the motion controls. But then, it goes a little bit further than that even, where it's hey, there's this thing on the Wii where you press the button and there's a home menu that appears. What if we made that a part of the video game? And that's the stuff I think Another Code and Hotel Dusk doesn't do very often, but when it does it, it's an incredibly interesting experience as you really had to sit down and think outside the box. I wish there's a little bit more of that in those games, but I'm glad it was there in the first place. And I think that was the thing that I kind of came away with outside of the characters and stuff like that, right? So Another Code remake, not the series I personally have a lot of interest in, but I think it is something that I still would enjoy. And if the puzzles were more interesting, I think I'd be more interested in checking out. But Bowl of Lentils, who does some YouTube videos and stuff like that, and a lot of more obscure Japanese game coverage, I think generally. Hopefully that's I'm trying to sometimes I follow so many people who make content that at some point I start forgetting what they've made and stuff. Anyways, I think she made a video about a GBA adventure game kind of thing. But they did a Giant Bomb review post, just a blog on there. It's not officially endorsed by Giant Bomb, but basically they wrote up their thoughts, and they seemed to have pretty mixed feelings about the game. Not that they said it was bad. I think the general sentiment they had was that Another Code Recollection was good, But the thing that really stood out to me at the end here was a line where they said, "I realized that these remakes felt less like the band coming back and more like a ghost of an old friend had paid me a visit to remind me of all the good memories we had together and to resolve any lingering feelings of regrets." And I think maybe the context of that a little bit is seeing dying kind of suddenly, right? Like Last Window came out and then seeing the company just kind of evaporated like within that same time frame. So I think maybe that's part of it. And I actually did an article forever ago called like "Putting Sing to Rest," I think, and I have not read it in forever. I have no idea what's actually, maybe I did an article reading about it. I don't remember. I remember having some kind of like Hotel Dusk article reading thing, but anyways, but yeah, basically saying that like it feels like, so, basically having a moment of clarity with seeing that they didn't really get to have with how the games kind of like disappeared into nothingness back then. But another thing as well with that is that they mentioned the hardware aspect of the game just didn't really come into play, and it is more of a, I don't want to say generic, standard 3D puzzle solving adventure game is what they basically kind of positioned it as. I did read an Inside Games article that does mention there's some use of gyro and things like that, which, a lot of controllers have gyro at this point, so that's not particularly that interesting. But I think that statement alone of just like this, like the thing that defines these games outside of characters, I really like the characters in Hotel Dusk, but the thing mechanically that defines those games for me being gone, it's just like, well, I have no reason to really look at this then. And it being a remake, I think was like also a part of it too, or just like, I don't really need to like have that story again. I know they've made changes to it, and it probably is better told because I remember the original Trace Memory feeling very light in terms of story. But yeah, I don't know. I'm having a hard time finding and mustering any enthusiasm for a game that I feel like really should be something I'd be excited about. But yeah, like I said, Hotel Dusk was probably more my baby than Another Code was, but anyways, it's a good read. I'd recommend going and reading it, but yeah, hearing that about the whole, like, kind of the original spirit of those games not really being there in terms of the gameplay, at the very least, was something that I think ultimately kind of killed my interest. And so I don't know if Bowl of Lentils was intending for that, but that is what happened, right? Like, it's one of those things that, like, at the end of the day, when you read a review, I don't know if they position this as a review. My thoughts on Another Code Recollection, so not really a review, but a lot of people get really snagged up about reviews and stuff and like what the text is, and going back to the Hogwarts Legacy thing. Oh, you wrote the review to say this, but you gave it this score thing. Whatever. Who cares? The point is like to look at the text and see what that means for you, right? So even though Bowl of Lentils had a pretty positive impression of Another Code Remake, it told me that the things I needed to know about not wanting to get that game, right? That Bowl of Lentils recognized, that being a core aspect of that series that was important, and the fact that they even mentioned it in there alone shows that, that they understood what I saw in those games to some extent, right? And again, they're positive on it, but saying that was the part that was missing was just like, oh, I probably don't need the rest of this then. So I think you're going to be skipping it, which is just a shame because, I do like that kind of like mid-range, small to mid-range Nintendo IP, and we just don't get a lot of that these days, right? But, it sounds like it came back in a way that I just really didn't have any interest in how it came back. I hope it goes well, right? Like, I mean, I have written off Sing as being dead, and maybe like if they did this with Hotel Dusk, I'd be more excited, right? I love the characters. I love Kyle Hyde. Kyle Hyde would probably at least be on like a top 30 characters in the gaming industry thing for me. There's a lot of things I like about Kyle. But yeah, it is something that it's unfortunate for me. But hey, if you play Another Code R remake, I keep saying R, let me know. Let me know what you think. Let me know what your thoughts are. So, we're going to get into Jillian's Corner here real quick, but before we do that, I want to just give a brief update on Final Fantasy XI video. There's a lot of things been going on with Final Fantasy XI lately. We talked a little bit about it in the last podcast, and I was like, oh, I'm kind of at this point where, like, the mage class that I want to get to whatever level's close to, I haven't done anything like that. I've only been doing crafting in Final Fantasy XI this whole year so far, this whole month, rather. But the Final Fantasy XI video that if you've watched the draft of, I've done, I have been doing a lot of thinking about what that video looks like going forward, and I think I have changed the objective of that video a little bit. That does not mean that the format won't be the same, but I think I am having a better understanding of where that video is going. And part of the problem with it originally was that there was kind of no end. My only impression, basically my thought was, I won't ever play enough Final Fantasy XI again to really give full thought. So what can I do to kind of compensate for that and do what I can in this process, right? And part of it's also I wanted to talk about it a little chronologically because the beginning of Final Fantasy XI is a very unique experience compared to the rest of that game. So I really wanted to, I wanted to do that, but I didn't really know when I was going to stop playing Final Fantasy XI or what my goals were really. And, in some ways I still don't really know that. But I think the thing I realized was I kind of understand, I think, where I want to go with the story of that video and what I want to end on, which is not something I've had before. So that does kind of open it up where I don't really know what I need to get there yet. The PCFX Fan Club podcast is just taking forever to get edited through, unfortunately. It's almost done. By the time you're hearing this, hopefully within the next week or so it'll be out. I don't know for sure. But it has been really draining on me. And so my hope is that once that's done, I can take some time to sit down and really put down these Final Fantasy XI thoughts I've had on paper and work out what it is. But basically, I think I see the end of that video now, and I think it will be one video. It will be a long video, and it kind of comes back to the whole Babylon's Fall thing where I never want to make a video like that again. The real thing of that Babylon's Fall video is yes, I don't consume videos that long, which is, a whole other thing. But the reason I don't want to make another video like Babylon's Fall again is less probably to do with the actual video and more probably to do with the fact that I crammed in, all the work in 2 weeks. And so I basically worked full time on that video for half a month, right? And it just was not a healthy way to approach that. Literally all waking hours for 2 weeks just working on that video. So the big thing is pacing it, right? And so for the Final Fantasy XI video, I think if I were to take that approach of something longer, that's the big thing. Pacing myself in a way that isn't going to make me physically ill would be good. So anyways, that is my thoughts on that. So I think my goals with Final Fantasy XI may be changing. I just don't know what those changing goals are yet at the moment. So I've been kind of paused on that game right now. I've been checking in to do specific things, but not really making any real progress right now on that. So anyways, that's it for that. It's time for Jillian's Corner. Hey, did you know you can support me on Ko-fi if you want to? And if you support me on Ko-fi, you can ask me a question. I do the thing every week where I forget to open the Ko-fi page to see who's been donating. So let me do that real quick and have that ready for us here. But I'm just going to fill some time with my mouth, fill these words out. I don't know how to navigate Ko-fi. How do I see the last month of donations? Who can say? I'm going to do this in a way that's not great. Oh my God. All right, I'm going to pause. All right. I figured it out. Anyways. And today I forgot the date. Okay, the 28th. Okay, so we got 2 donators this last month. We got Megament. Megament, you donated twice. Did you donate twice so you could ask a question? You can, I think, if you can't send me a message without sending me money, let me know, because you also do a monthly thing too. So let me know. Double Megament. So thank you, double Megamenti. And then also we got Demodori who donated again. Thank you again, Demodori, for your monthly donation as well. Did you know you can donate by month? I haven't really, I guess Jillian was as well. So, here we go. But, yeah, you can do that. So Demodori and double up Megament. Minty. Anyways, question wise, Megament is our question asker this week. So Jillian, you get a little bit of a break. Your onslaught of questions that you have delivered to me we'll extend out further for now. But Megament will be asking our question this week, which is, have you ever played Final Fantasy XIII? And if you have, then how did you feel about it? Final Fantasy XIII is, okay, my overall feeling, just so you know where I'm at with this, is I think Final Fantasy XIII is a smack dab middle of the road Final Fantasy. That's not a bad thing. Final Fantasy games are very good, right? Just in terms of like, if I were to put Final Fantasy on a chart, I think Final Fantasy 13 would be like dead center of like, not the worst, not the best, kind of in between for me. I know a lot of people do really like it, and I will say it's been a very long time since I played Final Fantasy 13. And in looking at some Final Fantasy 13 stuff recently, trying to remember what Saz as a character was, I was like, I don't remember any of these cutscenes or any of this development. So maybe a game that I need to refresh my memory on. But, you know, if I were to use my old needle, compass needle of Final Fantasy quality, I remember it being kind of like halfway of between most Final Fantasies. I had a lot of problems with how that game was portrayed at launch. So I had a really interesting experience where I was finally getting around to playing Final Fantasy X, and I was playing it, and you know, I think 10's good. I think 10's a better game than 13 overall, personally. But you know, 10's a very unique Final Fantasy. And it is like one of the only times I think in recent years that there's been a turn. Recent years, 2000, one of the later. I think it's the last time there's like a real solid turn-based RPG Final Fantasy game since then. I think that was the last one. So when it comes to mainline games at the very least. So, but yeah, I was playing that game and I was hearing the complaints people had about Final Fantasy 13, and I realized that they aligned really well. And I was like, Final Fantasy 10 is like a linear game. The combat system feels very similar in a lot of ways. And so at the end of the day, you know, even though Final Fantasy 13 is an action game, just like a lot of the priorities of the combat with like switching roles out mid-combat and things like that feel very similar. And so when people were saying like Final Fantasy 13 was like the worst Final Fantasy ever, I'm just like, I don't know. On paper, this looks like Final Fantasy X to me. So about 2 or 3 years later, I finally got around to playing Final Fantasy 13. And I will say that I generally felt that, yeah, I mean, Final Fantasy 13 in a lot of ways feels very close to Final Fantasy X. So it's weird to like put one up on a pedestal to me and then hold the other one lower. I think it's just changing expectations of the market, and also just like the Western RPG boom in the US on console specifically, I think had really done a number to people's expectations. You know, I think the linear was a bad word then, right? Linear is more of a descriptive word. It's not a bad thing, right? But it was used as a bad word back then. And it's one of those things I didn't really understand at the time. But anyways, my personal experience playing Final Fantasy 13, I thought the pacing was a little weird. Like specifically, I felt like the first like 15 to 20 hours of that game just a little slow. I think a lot of people felt that way. I think once you get around hour 15, it really starts to pick up, and 20 is around, I think, when you kind of get access to everything. But around 15, you have most of the tools you need for that combat system to be interesting. So it is a big ask, in my opinion, to ask people to spend 10 or 15 hours of that game just not really interacting with the full systems. But I think you can make that argument with a lot of other RPGs. But I think the reason why it stands out so much in Final Fantasy 13, in my opinion, is Square Enix, Final Fantasy games in general, have kind of a simple battle system overall. There's interesting things about them, but they're fairly simple. And so when you try to dumb it down even further, you kind of just get down to like the attack button kind of thing, which, hey, you know, there's a whole series called Dragon Quest. And I don't know what Final Fantasy 13's early game does and different than what Dragon Quest early game does, but Dragon Quest is a series I feel like if you start the game, the big part of the beginning of that game is going to be press the attack button over and over and over again. So for me, that was kind of the big thing. It's just the pacing. It felt like it just took a while to get going, but overall, like, it's a great looking game. I think the combat's really cool. I don't have any real strong memory of the story and characters. And it might be one of those situations where, like, I kind of remember what I liked about the combat Final Fantasy 13, which is like that dynamic role switching in battle, kind of thing is kind of the big part of Final Fantasy 13, I feel like. And I should mention, I turned auto battle off, so my experience with that game was a little bit more engaging versus somebody who might, like, you know, I have a friend that like casted Libra on every fight and then just clicked auto battle, which, you know, at that point you're starting to look at like mobile game territory. It's like, okay, what? Not in a bad way, but in the sense of like, you know, you build your loadout of characters, and then when they're auto battling, you're kind of seeing the execution of the loadout you gave them, right? And it's a different way to appreciate it, right? I was talking about this with the guy at Retro City Games when I was buying Chocobo Stallion. I'm like, you know, if you're not directly racing, what is the appeal of a horse racing game. And well, it's like, it's a racing game, right? You're raising your horse kind of thing. We're talking about horse racing now. I'm sorry. and you know, the payoff is seeing your horse perform, right? And so you don't necessarily do anything to make your horse perform, although I feel like some derby games have like a stamina meter and cheering on kind of thing. But you know, it's more about seeing the execution of your planning in a lot of ways. And I think there's a satisfaction to that, right? So if you do play Final Fantasy XIII as a game with auto battle as its main focus, I could definitely see that being an appeal. I prefer to have more control over the situations. And so like, even if I'm going to just put in, you know, blitz over and over and over again on lightning or something like that, at the very least, I'm putting that input in and like, it feels like I'm doing something. But that is what I need kind of thing. So, but yeah, I really like mechanical parts of that game. Linearity, I think, is fine. Again, it is kind of like a, you know, it kind of feels like being on a roller coaster ride, right? Like a Metal Slug game in a lot of ways too, of just like, you're just kind of walking and just enjoying the show. Maybe I should say Metal Slug if you are playing on free, like infinite credits, because I think if you are trying to play with a certain number of credits, Metal Slug is a very stressful game. But when you're just like enjoying the show, beat 'em up, same thing. If you're playing on free play, just enjoying the show. And I feel like Final Fantasy XIII, when it comes to an environmental aspect, is just enjoying those backgrounds, man. Look at all those set pieces. Like, look at these graphics. We made them look real freaking good. And they still look good today. The hands are a little blocky on characters. Don't worry about it. But you know, I think that is kind of where I sit with Final Fantasy XIII, is that, like, for me, there's a lot of really good things about it. There's some things I don't like about it. You know, somebody who likes kind of complicated Japanese, complicated RPG battle systems and things like that. Yeah, it's something that I do think is something I would ask more of when it comes to Final Fantasy. But a lot of times I don't think that's the point of Final Fantasy, right? I think maybe one thing I need to do someday is really sit down and ask the question of, like, what's the appeal of Final Fantasy combat for me? Because it's something I'm obviously very willing to engage with, right? And enjoy. So what is it that drives Final Fantasy combat for me? I don't know the answer to that. I think a stagger meter is great, and obviously, you know, that kind of has a relation to Xenoblade in terms of the break meter. But I think Xenoblade's a much more complicated system there versus what's happening with you know, Final Fantasy. Xenosaga 3 kind of gets in Final Fantasy territory, and that was always a huge disappointment for me. But you know, I don't know. Maybe I just don't expect much out of Final Fantasy's gameplay, but I still enjoy it. So yeah, is that enough, Mega Man? Was that enough for your money? That's gonna be it for that. I think you said you were enjoying Final Fantasy 13 or playing it right now, or maybe you just finished it, enjoyed it, and really liked it. Either way, enjoy either playing that game further or enjoy your post Final Fantasy 13 life, Mega Man. Enjoy yourself. Again, if you donate on Ko-fi, you can ask me a question if you want. We got another question from Mega Man next week. Next 2 weeks, 2 weeks from now. Look forward to that. And then if we don't get any new questions, Jillian will return for, I think we have 5 or 6 more questions for Jillian. And then at that point, you know, we have asked a lot of Jillian for questions for many years now. So I don't know how many more questions there are to be asked. But Jillian, you're always welcome to ask more questions if you have anything. But I know you have asked maybe hundreds of questions at this point. So let's get into the news. We got some really spicy news this week. I had a moment of, I don't know if fear is the right word, concern. 2 arcade games announced they were shutting down basically the exact same day. Wacha Purimaji, as well as Dragon Quest Crossblades. If you don't know, Purimaji is like basically one of those fashion rhythm games the way that Aikatsu is, right? You dress up your character, you get scores based off what you need for songs, like, oh, this song requires cute clothes, or this song requires sexy clothes, and things like that, right? Which, you know, look, the Japanese word use of sexy in like a kid's video game, I don't want to get into, but you know, that is one of the categories typically in these games is sexy. It's like cute, sexy, what are the other ones? Cool. I feel like there's a lot pop or something like that. I don't know, but there's categories for these typically. But anyways, so that was the Purimaji game. I think it's Purimaji, right? I don't know. I haven't written Primaji here. Maybe it's Primaji. Don't ask me. Pretty Cure dancing game, basically, to my understanding. That's like, as much as I understand this space, that's like the thing I'm super ignorant of is like, what is the relationship between Premaji and Pretty Cure, and is it Premaji because like pretty I don't know what I don't know Japanese words. I've been bad at studying my Japanese lately. I need to be better about it. Working on it. I've been doing some habit practices, and I'm hoping to work Japanese in there as well to study Japanese every day for Jesus Christ. I don't know. I got a Jesus Christ or Church of Jesus Christ ad recently it's shaped like an iPhone, and it says Jesus is calling you, and there's accept and decline. And it really got to me because the battery on the phone says 23%. And I'm like, are they trying to say that like time's running out? You're going to die and you're not going to be able to answer the call of Jesus Christ. Anyways, sorry. Just like funny little ads like that. Like I love that might have been the thought that went into this, or it could have been they found a graphic for 23% and they put it in there. I don't know. We're talking about fashion rhythm games. Premaji. So that's shutting down the latest game of that, and then also Dragon Quest Crossblades is shutting down as well. Which, if you don't know, that was the Dragon Quest game I played in Japan, where you get cards and you can move your characters on the map, and it's like a positional thing, because you put the cards on a table kind of thing and stuff. I have a video on it on the OCP Plus channel if you want to check it out, where I talked about that game. I couldn't really review it per se. I think it might be marked as a review because whatever. But, it had way too much content. But we'll soon have no content because the game is shutting down. I believe maybe by the time you're hearing this, the game is shut down in Japan, actually. I think it was the end of January. I don't know if it has, like, offline functionality or whatever. But Premaji is shutting down early February. This was concerning to me for a couple of reasons. One is... The fashion rhythm space in Japan in the arcades has really shrunk. Aikatsu's exited the market as far as I can tell. Tokadol left the market as well, right? And then all the other kind of older stuff is not around anymore, like the Lika-chan games and Love and Berry, although there's been kind of a Love and Berry anniversary resurgence, I feel like. But no game yet for Love and Berry. So Premaji is the last thing remaining. So I was looking at this news story. I was like, well, what's left? What's left in that space, right? And so I was kind of concerned. And if you don't know, the similar like pieces between these two games is that Sin Sophia made both of them. And as you may know, Sin Sophia, style savvy developer, but also recently put out Fashion Dreamer with Marvelous, and that was a huge success. I was like, maybe they're just like done with this kind of thing, and I was a little concerned. Like it made me realize the fragility of that market, given there's like only one game left standing basically at the end of it, and if that one game is gone, what happens? Anyways, so I was a little worried. Only to be like, I should not have been worried. I think there may have been like a statement about them actually announcing a new game that I missed at the time, but they announced 2 new Premaji games. One aimed at children as like an entry point kind of game, and the other one named at core users, which is basically the existing Premaji market. That one's called Verse, which as far as I can tell is more of the same. It's a 3-button rhythm game. Dress up, get on your cool, your sexy, your cute clothes, you dance, stuff like that. So more or less, here's just the latest version. Wouldn't be surprised if it runs on the exact same hardware, just new, new release version, basically. So the other one's a little more interesting in a couple different ways, which is Premaji Himitsu. This is the one that's aimed at children, and it was a little confusing as exactly why it was specifically aimed at children before, but I think I better understand it now, where it is not requiring a bunch of inputs in this case. It's using a card that you move around a panel. I was like, that sounds really familiar. That kind of sounds like I mean, it's not just Dragon Quest Crossblades. There are many arcade machines that do this, where there's a panel that you put a card on and it tracks it. Look up the picture of this thing. It is literally the Dragon Quest Crossblade hardware, like the form factor and the shape, in a very like a Tokadol Oreka battle kind of way. So yeah, it is. I don't know if they are rebranding these machines, if they're shutting down Crossblades and making them a Premaji Himitsu system, or if they're just, using the same provider and stuff like that. And they're like, hey, we have this model how can we use this? So basically how this one works is you have a card, and it's a character on the card as far as I can tell. I don't see any clothes, so I don't think you have the cute, sexy, cool kind of aspect to it. You just put your stupid dumb character, I don't know, your character, your Primaji character down on the board, and you move it around like a rhythm game, right? You drag it around, and so there's stuff that appears on screen, and you trace the card around it, right? And a 4Gamer had a impressions piece about this where they're talking about it, and definitely was like a very simple rhythm game in that aspect. They're like, but you can increase the challenge by having 2 cards. So you have 2 character cards that you put down, and you move them around on the screen, on the panel as well, to trace the screen. And so that is challenging enough that they felt like adults were also, capable of enjoying it, kind of thing, right? Which, these are games made for children, and even if you play like the regular Primaji verse kind of thing, it's a very simple game overall. Like, the priorities of these rhythm games is not to be a challenging rhythm game. There's many other aspects that are more important to that. The rhythm game aspect is kind of just a layer on top of that, right? So Himitsu is taking a lot of that away, though, and so you're kind of moving stuff around. What is the depth of that long term? I don't know. I don't know if this is would be a successful thing, but it is interesting change to these kind of games, because even Aikatsu is like a 3-button rhythm game. A Tokadol, it doesn't look like it, but it is essentially a 3-button rhythm game, because it has the 2 cat eyes that you hit on the arcade machine, and then you have I think is it supposed to be its nose? I don't remember how they present it. Maybe it's not the nose. I think it's just a random lever on the Tokadol machine, where I think in the Eureka battle it had a bit more of a context to it. But, the lever was the 3rd button. You rarely used it, but it was something you would use. And so, they all have very similar setups between all these. So this is a different kind of thing. My only concern up front with this is that if you ever played like Gabriella's Ghostly Groove on the Nintendo 3DS, and I don't remember if this is also true for, what's that game called? Cheer We Go. I feel like Cheer We Go, all the elements were on the touchscreen. But in the case of Gabriella's Ghostly Groove, the touchscreen does not have any indicators on it. The top screen has the indicators. So what happens is you have to move the stylus on this bottom separate display that's separate from the top display and kind of track where you're going on screen. And that's definitely the case here with Himitsu, because the bottom panel is not a screen. It is just a board that tracks where your card is. So you're going to have to kind of like line that up and move it with it. So I'm really curious to see if this works out. And if I go to Japan anytime in the near future, that will probably be the game I really try to track down. If it's anything like Dragon Quest Crossblades, it's not something that's very appealing to an older audience for the most part. So what I had to do with Dragon Quest Crossblades until I found one like set of machines in Akihabara was go to various supermarkets and things like that, and more like places that were more focused on things like Pretty-Cura and things like that, right? Or crane game places, or like a big camera, things like that. Like places where I think it's a little bit more likely kids come and will play those things versus like, right by the Gundam versus machines where everybody's smoking and you get secondhand smoke like I did with the Tokadol, right? So I think it's just kind of a different situation. But, Primaji is pretty popular, so it could very much end up in like Akihabara. The place I found Dragon Quest Crossblades in Japan when I was there, and they were setting it up like while I was there, was which is like the Hirose Entertainment Yard. They had a very good, diverse range of arcade units, so I would not be surprised if they get at least 2 of these machines. Or rebrand the Dragon Quest Crossblades machines that are already there with this. So I'm really excited for it. I think it's really cool. I don't know when we'll see it. I'm very curious, what the diversity of those cards are going to look like. What do the cards even mean? Like, is it just choosing the character that's going to be on screen? Or are there going to be additional aspects to it? Being a children's game, I think they wouldn't make it too complicated. Dragon Quest Crossblade also had a IC card scanning system where you could like basically buy a card and use that as save data. So I'm curious to see if they will do a similar thing there, and you can buy like cards to track progress or something like that, or if they will stick with one thing you do with Dragon Quest Crossblade if you didn't have a save file card is just play with monsters. So you wouldn't get any progress, but you could play these battles just using monster cards. And so I wonder if that's going to be the focus, is you're going to set up a machine and there's going to be no progress. It's just the cards you have is your progress, right? So Very curious about that. So anyways, I am looking forward to checking that out someday, assuming it survives long enough for me to get out there and play it and find it. That's the other hard thing, is finding those machines. So our last news story here is crazy. It is like, this news story is like a parody news story. Like, it shouldn't exist the way it exists. And like, part of me just loves that it does exist this way. I'm going to open up because I want to see the exact wording of this again. Love Live. If you don't know, Idle game. I don't know anything about them. It's kind of the Idle Master space, and Idle Master Shining Festa and stuff like that on mobile, I think, is still popular. But Love Live has really, I think, lost relevance over the years. There is the Love Live game that came out that was like the what's her face? Oh God, it's the one that is like the one Indie Creates made a game around. Gosh, I don't know. There's a girl that's like kind of like, I love dark magic, and then so they're like, what if we made a video game where she has her own action adventure game kind of thing, right? And there's a card battler and stuff like that. So those came out. I don't know if they did the numbers or not. But and I don't know, maybe there's something Love Live going on. I don't know the let's just say financial situation of Love Live and the certainty of its future. I think there is a possibility that I just don't have a scope or understanding of where Love Live is popular. But the game that launched, Love Live School Idol Festival 2, in Japan last year, is shutting down in April. And so yeah, that game is, it's only been about a year, which is about right for a live service game, right? Comes out, you get a chance to see if it succeeds, and then you do a bit of tweaking here and there, and after a year, if it doesn't work out, I think around like the 9 months mark, you make the decision of like, okay, well, are we going to invest in this any further? No, start to shut it down. The Square Enix model of live service game, right? The crazy thing about this story is they announced a global version of Love Live School Idol Festival. It had not launched yet. So this is the version that'd be outside Japan. So at the same time they announced the shutdown of the Japanese version, they announced the release date for the global version, which is not unheard of. There's some old World War I anime I watched that had a similar situation where the Japanese version of the game was shutting down as the US version was spinning up. And basically what they did was they just kept running the game, I assume just through all the content that the Japanese team had made at that point. And then basically we're like, if it works, we'll figure it out. We'll figure out how to continue this game. If it doesn't work, we'll shut it down. We have this content, just do it. That is not what's happening here. They, in the exact same tweet, they say, we are excited to break the news to you that the global version of Love Live School Idol Festival 2 Miracle Live is launching soon in February 2024. However, we also want to inform you the global version will close its doors on May 31st, 2024 and cease in-app purchases accordingly. We appreciate the love and support you've shown, and we've committed to making these last few months an unforgettable moment. The game's not even out yet, so and yeah, it's just like that is the extension of the joke, right? You look at what Square Enix is doing, and you're like, okay, you announce it's shutting down before it even comes out, right? That's the funny joke. This is reality, and and my only assumption is it's gonna cost them more money to put this thing out and shut it down, right? Like, there's a 2 to 3 month period where you can buy something. I'm going to guess not much money is going to be spent. Like, maybe you can make an argument that like, hey, in this time frame, you could have people who just want to get as much as they can out of Love Live 2, and will burn all their money in this period of time and you'll make money. Maybe that's the case. I don't know. I would imagine most people aren't going to invest the money into something that will be available for a month or two and be gone. Or at least a significant amount in the way that mobile idle games need you to, right? my best guess is like there's some contract going on here. Like they're basically forced to release this and shutting it down right afterwards. So I don't know for sure. That's just my best guess. But yeah, it's crazy. It is like a parody news story in reality, and just like it's like train horse racing and Love Live shutting down and launching in the exact same tweet. Is like, it's just like, it's a beautiful start to the year. I don't care about Love Live. My heart goes out to those who care about Love Live. but this is the best way this could have gone for me, because otherwise this would be meaningless. But for me, it's like, wow. For some reason, this girl's finger looks really long on the official art. I don't know why. It just looks like a third longer than it should be. But I don't know. That's it for this week. Thanks for coming. OneChore.com is the website. I think, stuff happened between, it's a little hard to keep track of the stuff coming out between these podcasts, because every 2 weeks stuff happens. On the One Short Plus channel, I put out a video about Kier Pop Princess. It is a very just kind of rambly video in the way that the One Plus channel is. That came out, and check that out if you want. I love Kier Pop Princess. It's a great video game, and I'm really glad that was the last game I beat last year, and also the second game was the first game I beat this year. Maybe my favorite Hugh Next game. I have a little section in there talking about Hugh Next. It's also going to show up on the PCFX Fan Club podcast as well, so I'll talk about it there. So that came out. I forget if I had mentioned this. Cinema Roll Fufu Dai Boken. That casual review came up as well. So those are two more recent casual reviews. And then between this podcast and the next one, there should be another one that comes out. Let me see what it is. The Kier Pop Princess one came out in between just because I was really excited to get it out. So, it's not a normal thing. Don't expect, multiple per month. That was just a situation that arose there. But at the moment, basically planning for about one a month at this time. My SAS story, Heads or Tail, casual review thing is going to be going up on February 7th. So will we have a podcast between now and there? Sorry if you're hearing a bunch of clicking. We will not. So between now and then, that will be on February 7th. So look forward to that. That is just editing an old podcast clip. If you haven't listened to the old podcast or just forgot, you can check that out there. Really cool gambling game in the Final Fantasy universe. So check that out. Otherwise, the PCFX Fan Club podcast should be coming out here relatively soon. So I think you should be able to see that between now and the next episode. So again, it was all this stuff. You can go to onechore.com and see the latest stuff on there. Just click the recent tab. And hopefully that podcast will be done soon so I can move on to other things, because I've been incredibly antsy to move on. So and I think part of this as well, I think part of it is because Final Fantasy XI, I was kind of like stuck with Final Fantasy XI for a little bit, just not really sure what I was doing with it. Still playing it, still am playing it, but not really to any meaningful degree, just kind of logging in and doing some like crafting and selling stuff and things like that. So trying to understand what my goals are for Final Fantasy XI going forward is something I've been trying to figure out. I feel just antsy to get things done. So my hope is I'll be able to move on here shortly. So, but yeah, that's gonna be it. OneChore.com is the website, and I hope you guys have a great 2 weeks. Bye.